Hello Exiles, it's Remy here. Today I'll be making a build guide on the build I have been playing in the Expedition League. This build is inspired by both Arcanist Miner and Bubu's custom crate. Both of their original videos are in the description below. Originally, this build was planned as a Secrets of Suffering setup with Code to Fire support. Secrets of Suffering removes the ability to ignite, chill, freeze, and shock. In return, it grants us Scorch, Brittle, and Sap. Scorch reduces enemy elemental resistance, while Brittle increases the base critical strike chance taken, and Sap reduces the damage dealt by an enemy. Additionally, this is a mana miner, so some mandatory uniques are required such as Indigent and Cloak of Defiance, and since this is a miner build, it is a fairly active build to play with a number of buttons to press. If you are someone that are looking for a stress-free build or a one-button build, this build is probably not for you. I personally started Exsanguinate Spellslinger for Expedition League, then rewrote into this build once I have my clusters and the required mana gears for the build. Crit multi-jewels and alternate quality gems are very important for the build. It is highly recommended to pay attention on the out quality gems used throughout on the build. As you can see in the clips shown above, I have been obliterating all bosses instantly under seconds. This build is fairly smooth in terms of clear speed, the survivability is very great. So before I continue down the video, this video is not scripted at all, so I'll be apologizing in advance for my ums and stutters in the video later on. There are two core uniques used in this build. One of them is Leadership's Prize. So Leadership's Prize grants us Scorching Conflux, Brittle Conflux, and Sapping Conflux, while two of your highest attributes are equal. What this means is, for example, my Intelligence and Dexterity are the highest true attributes of my build. So if both of them are balanced, I would have the Scorching Conflux, Sapping Conflux, and Brittle Conflux, as you can see right here. So if my attributes are not balanced, you could see, I don't have the conflux on my buff bars anymore. So do make sure to take note every time when you are swapping gears, because when you are swapping gears such as your jewels, they might have intelligence on it and it might ruin your conflux. So I really recommend to get any scepters with open suffix, so you could easily craft on the intelligence and balance around that easier. So Pain Seekers is the second mandatory unique, the core unique of this build. So we don't really care about the critical strikes do not inherently apply non-damaging alignments. What this basically means is that the critical strike chance don't have 100% to apply elemental alignments. So this doesn't really matter, but we are already dealing a lot of damage that will be applying the alignments on the enemies anyway, so this line doesn't really matter. So the most bottom line is the most important part of the build. So it says inflict non-damaging alignments as through dealing 170% more damage. So what this basically means is, for example, you are dealing 100 damage, and with these gloves, it calculates alignment damage as through you are dealing something like 300 damage if it is max roll. 100% damage means that it is as if you are dealing double damage, and 200% more damage means that you are as if dealing triple damage. So I'll be now explaining the three alternate alignments and what they exactly does. So in the interrogation jewel, it shows what Secret of Suffering grants. So Scorch enemies have their elemental resistance lowered by up to 30%, so this is similar to exposure or elemental penetration. It is similar to them, but it's not exactly the same because it is scaled by alignment effect, while the penetration and exposure are not. So it is based on the fire damage of the hit, but since we are using Leadership's Prize and it grants us Conflux instead, all of our damage will be able to apply Scorch, so it doesn't need to base on the fire damage. Instead now it's based on the hit, so just ignore the damage type. And for Brittle, it says hits have up to plus 15 critical strike chance against Brittle enemies. So what this means that it is similar to the pre-nerf Ball of Faith, which is the plus base critical strike chance, and then imagine that you have about 15 of the min roll Ball of Faith. About 15 of the +1 base crit Ball of Faith. And for the set enemies, it means that set enemies deals up to 20% less damage. So think about that, it is a perma 45 on yourself. This is my current character in the league. I am currently level 96 and 54% to level 97. So for the gears, I recommend using scepters as the main weapons. We don't want to use daggers because we have a bunch of crit chance already and we are already crit capped. So the mods that I recommend looking for are increased spell damage with non-chaos and extra chaos damage, flat preferred, and then at least 100 mana. And we want to have at least T2 crit multi. If not, you can just look for a crafted crit multi in your scepters. So the current scepters I'm using, this is the ultimate endgame scepters that I have PoB a lot. And you want to look for flat lightning to spells, gain lightning damage, extra chaos, and max mana, at least 130, but this one is kinda lower, but it's fine. And you want to look for the S-Link crit multi while a rare or unique is nearby. And then one of the scepters you want to look for an open suffix because you want to craft for intelligence so you can balance around your leadership price easier. And then the second scepter is also the same, but on this time, I have double damage on it instead. So I kind of failed the slam on this scepter. You could look for unnerf. Instead, I slammed an ignite, which pretty much does nothing to the build, is a wasted stat. Like for the helmet, we will be using Indigan. Indigan is the mandatory, it's the core unit of this build. So we want to look for increased spell damage for at the max roll increased spell damage, and we prefer to have Arcane Cloak enchant because this Arcane Cloak enchant boosts a lot of our damage. And Amulet, this is the core unit of this build. So preferably you want to look for at least all zeros if you're on a budget, something like this. My fire and cold are 0. You don't want to look for anything with negatives. But if possible, we want to have max roll fire rest, which is 3%, because we will be using Righteous Fire a lot. So having a max fire rest will mitigate the degen of Righteous Fire. For the body armor, Cloak of Defiance, this is nothing special. This is the to-go body armor for a lot of mana builds. So we want to have high roll max mana and then mana enchant. And then for the ring, one of them will just be life, mana, and rest. So you don't really need the increased effect of non-damaging alignments. This is something that is nice to have, but I don't think this is mandatory. And then the other ring is Snake Pit. Snake Pit is mandatory for this build because it boosts a lot of our damage, primarily because of the Hydro Spear chain interaction. So I quickly explain how the Hydro Spear chain interaction works. So for example, if Zana is a boss, every Eye of Winter that passes through the Hydro Spear would chain to Zana. So which means that all 8 projectiles fired from the Eye of Winter would actually hit Zana. So this boosts our damage tremendously. But the positioning of the Hydro Spear is also very important. You ideally want to put the Hydro Spear between you and the boss, something like this. And make sure to put it on your right ring slot because you want the chain, not the fork. And for the gloves, we really want to have Pain Seekers because Pain Seekers is the BIS and it makes us inflict alignments much more easier on bosses. We could hit max alignment effect on Cyrus in just a matter of seconds. And for the corruption, I prefer to have +1 to level socket chance because we will be using enhance on it. And you can see my enhance is level 5. And for the belt, we will be using just a Stygian Vice with life, mana, and rest. You don't really need the Redeemer influence because I don't have any Redeemer stats right here. Preferably, we want to have the increased flash mana recovery rate. And yeah, just life, mana, and rest. And for the Abyssal Socket, we will be using flat, cold, and crit multi and mana in it. If possible, you could look for high flat lightning. I prefer high flat lightning instead of cold, but I can't really find a flat lightning, so the flat cold is the best one for my situation right now. And for the boots, we'll be using Omioken. Omioken is very important for our survivability, and it also gives us onslaught while not on low mana. So this boosts our clear speed and survivability by a lot. So for the enchant, I look for flat lightning damage, or if you could also look for elemental penetration for if you want more damage. But if you want more survivability, you could look for dodge instead. And for the flask, one of them will have to be Catalyst, Divine Mana Flask of Hate. You could replace this with a Lavian Gas Spirit, but I prefer to have additional suffix for the immunities. So one of them would be Divine Catalyst, and another one would be Quartz, Quicksilver, the Wise Oak. So the Wise Oak, currently we are triple balanced, so we can have all three elemental damage. We take all reduced damage on all three elemental resistance, and we penetrate all three elemental resistance. And these numbers are boosted by our flash effect. So it is not 6 and it's not 8, so it's way higher than that. So this boosts our survivability and damage. And without a Wise Oak, we don't even have cap resistance. You can see right here later on. Yeah, right here. We are not even capped on resistance. We could even sustain Wise Oak on our high load, so it doesn't really matter that we could sustain it on map bosses like Cyrus. And then the last one would be Enduring Divine Mana, and I prefer to have Avoid Stun because we will have a lot of issues on getting stunned by monsters, so I prefer to have that. So this is my current passive tree. This is a level 96 passive tree. And for Ascendancy, we'll be using Elementalist and Pathfinder. We'll be pathing to Path of the Witch, and then we'll be starting grab nodes right here. And my nodes right here are very good, so I don't think we should be dropping them. So this is how my tree looks like, and overall, we'll be using 2 large cluster jewels, and we want to have at least 3 notables with Scintillating Idea. And the other one can be a suffix with random ones, so I prefer to have either Widespread Destruction or Disorienting Display. The Scintillating Idea must be not at the middle, because if it's at the middle, it will be something that it will be having on this position, and this is not something what we want. So do note that when you are trading. Also, when you are trading, do always look at the bottom one. You don't want to look for the top display. And then for the medium cluster jewels, we want to look for Distilled Perfection and Liquid Inspiration. We want to have at least 3 of them, so I'm using at least 3. And the last one would be Distilled Perfection and Spike Concoction. So for this base, we want to look for increased mana recovery rate from flash instead of the increased flash effect duration. So this is another one of my large. I am using this Disorienting Display because it grants you blind, and it massively increases your survivability. And for the unique jewels, one of them would be Transcendent Flash. This is boosted by our Lethal Pride. The Lethal Pride will grant additional strength near radius, and this will boost the amount of strength grants to our Transcendent Flash for crit multi. You can see right here, I'm granting at 77% crit multi. This is a very massive damage boost for us. And for the Lethal Pride, we will be looking for double damage nodes. And for the Watcher's Eye, we want to prioritize looking for the damage taken from mana before life while affected by clarity. That is the priority role. And if you have more currency, you can look for the crit multi while affected by precision. And for the normal jewels, we'll be looking for max life, mana, and as much crit multi as we can find. And we do need some int on some of our jewels because we want to balance our int for our leadership price. So these are some of the examples of the jewels that I am using for the build. Alright, now for the gem sections of the build. So this is my utility gems. I am using Phantasmal Lightning Warp. This is because I could spam Lightning Warp around the maps, so I don't have a cooldown to worry about. So I'm using Phantasmal Lightning Warp for less duration support, and faster casting. And for the other scepter, is the auras, so I'm using precision. If you have more currency, you could look for divergent precision, but I don't think that is important because it only grants you 2% damage and it is something that is not noticeable at all. And then we want to look for anomalous clarity. We want to keep this at level 1 to make sure, because we don't want to reserve a lot of our mana. And then this is the portal for QOL on map clearing. So this is our first 4 link. We'll be using Sniper's Mark, Enhanced 4, Arcanist Brand with Divergent Wave of Conviction. If you are on a budget, you don't want to use Divergent Wave of Conviction. Instead, you just look for a 3 link and then you use Vortex on the 4th. Make sure it's not supported by Arcanist Brand. Something that I do want to take note of is Divergent Wave of Conviction could actually one-shot you on Freeze Reflect maps. So if you are doing Freeze Reflect maps, you might want to unequip Wave of Conviction or just don't use Arcanist Brand at all. And for the gloves, we will be using Divergent Arcane Cloak. This is very important. This is one of the must get alcoholic gems because this massively boosts your damage. Then we will be using a Divergent Vow Righteous Fire. You don't need the Vow version, you just need the normal version of the Divergent Righteous Fire. It grants us increased spell damage, about 52%. This is a massive damage boost. And then we want to have Divergent Arcane Surge. This is because we would able to maintain 8-second Arcane Surge duration instead of 4. You can see I have an 8-second duration of Arcane Surge. And for the last one would be Enhanced Form. So this is currently boosted by your gloves, Plasma Unsocketed, and it is currently level 5. And for the last one, this is a Sigil of Power, increased area of effect, Divergent Hydro Spear, and increased duration support. Increased duration support is very good because it makes our Hydro Spear last for additional 5 seconds. And finally, for the main link, we'll be using Anomalous Eye of Winter, High Impact Mines, Divergent Charge Mines, Minefield, Critical Damage, and Trap and Mine Damage support. So if you don't want less throwing speed, you could replace this with an Anomalous Elemental Penetration. I think this is pretty good if you don't have this kind of rings. I have tested a lot of out quality gems. I have almost all of them with level 2120, and I found out that because I have a lot of damage, now that I am prioritizing clear speed, so Anomalous Eye of Winter is my choice. If you want more damage, I would prefer a normal version instead. Divergent Eye of Winter have a very niche mechanic, so I will be explaining this on another video. And it is not technically bad, but this is worth something to explain on another video because I would take pretty much a very long time to explain how this exactly works.